We have already concluded that the research of B.B. Lal shows that Mahabharata, it was 3000 BC, still earlier than that. And some people have put an exact date as 3102 BCE. Friends, after a very long time talking about Indian culture, and during British times, the two most important influential people were William Jones and Max Müller. Both were the employees of East India Company. Müller never visited India, and he wrote a lot about us. I'll say as a split personality, because what he wrote about us, which he wanted the British to know, it was different, and what he conveyed to us was totally different. His job was to show that we were uncivilized people, and the British, the so-called civilized, they had the right to rule over us. And that's why the whole British historians team, they played on our history. They created our history. To begin with, I would say that the first text that we have about Indian culture, it is Rig Veda. Max Müller initially said, and this was because, uh, according to Bible, Earth came into being 4004 BC. Church believed it. So therefore, nobody on the earth, nothing on the earth can be older than that. So they had to create. Firstly, he said, Rig Veda, it is 500 AD. CE was called AD at that time. People didn't agree. Then he said, no, I mean 500 BC. Again, he didn't agree. People didn't agree. And then he said 1200 BC, and still the people were not agree. Finally, he said, it's a time immemorial since the Rig Veda was composed. But all what Max Muller wrote in 1870s, 1890s, there is a book 30 years older than that at least. This is the book. This is the book, The Theogony of the Hindus, written by Swede Josterna and written in 1844. He more logically and scientifically told the age of Rig Veda, though I have already explained in some of my videos that it is much, much, much beyond that. They have borrowed all our history and culture. When you say Brahma, they perverted it to Abraham. When we say Manu, they made it to Manu, Manuh, then they removed Ma, it became Nuh. So they have done it. But this man, he sincerely made an effort to find out how old the Rig Veda is. And he says that we must have a starting point. Hmm? Says the right age of Vedas has long formed an unsolved problem for the learned of Europe, some of who have considered it to belong to a very early period. Others again are being more recent. At length, a fixed point has been found from which to proceed in the Hindu chronology. Hmm? And this fixed point, he says, starts with the king Nandi, which commenced about 400 years BC. The sixth king before Nandas, was Ajatashatru. If we reckon a reign of 30 years for each of these six kings, then Nandis included their result a period of 210 years, which added to the 400 years before Christ when Nandis began to reign, give for the commencement of the reign of the Ajatashatru the date of 610 years before Christ. Four different Puranas specify in accordance the succession of 47 kings who reigned before Ajatashatru from the great war between the royal races of Pandavas and Kauravas, which is celebrated in the famous poem Mahabharata, where Krishna appears as the hero of the former. We have already concluded that the research of B.B. Lal shows that Mahabharata, it was 3000 BC, still earlier than that. And some people have put an exact date as 3102 BCE. Here also again we take the average of 30 years. Then the reign of each king which agrees with the usual proportion in India, there results a period of 1410, all those kings combined, which adds to the time when Ajatashatru began to reign 610 years before Christ, shows that the Great War took place about 2000 years before Christ. I told you we have now found it is 3000. It was at this time that Vyas made his abridgment of the Vedas under the name of Vedanta, a circumstance he himself mentions in his work. Hence, we find that the Vedanta was composed 2000 years before Christ. With this guidance, we can now find the correct age of the Vedas, of which the Vedanta by Vyasa, as have already been stated, is but an abstract. The Hindus assert that the Vedas are several thousand years older than the Vedanta. This seems an exaggeration. However, Vedas must be much older than the Vedanta, since the author of the latter gives us a reason for undertaking his work. The language of Vedas is obsolete and unintelligible to the people of his. This circumstance presupposes a period of at least some centuries, let us take 500, which adds to 2000 years before Christ. When the Vedanta was written, gives us the age of 25 years before Christ for Vedas. And again, he has several commentaries at many places, not including them. We must, moreover, not overlook the circumstance that the first book of the Vedas is written in a far more ancient Sanskrit than the three other books. Let us take 3 centuries for this difference of language, and we find that the first book of the Vedas, which, like the first book of the Moses or Genesis, contains the cosmogony of the Hindu system of religion, must be 2800 years older than the birth of Christ. It is at least, which, according to the Hebrew composition, is 800 years before the time of Abraham. 800 years before the times of Abraham. The Abrahamic religions, obviously, in so remote an age, the Hindus already possessed written books of religion. What do you understand? If I could find it out, now you have known about it, do you think Max Müller could not have? The fact is that antecedents of our ancient culture, they call it Hindu civilization, I call it our ancient cultural heritage. At that time, there was no Hindu, no Muslim, no Christian. It goes much beyond the timeline that we have. If you talk about Surya Siddhant, the date is yet to be ascribed. Some people say it is 15,000 years, maybe older. And now, when you have already got a temple of Devi in Siddhi in Madhya Pradesh, which is about 11,000 years old, do you think it's not a part of Vedic culture? Think, think to be a Bharatiya. Thank you.